Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar about citizen fins, part of the Explorathon 2020. My name is Monica, and I'm a researcher at the Sea Mammal Research Unit. So we're based in St. Andrews, the University of St. Andrews. And with me today, we have Jennifer, who is also based at the Sea Mammal Research Unit and is working for the Citizen Fins project. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining in today to listen to this webinar. We're going to be talking today about this new project called Citizen Fins. I'll give you some background on why we have started this project. And then we're going to have plenty of time to discuss all of the questions that you've submitted and on the online form. So thank you so much for those that have submitted questions. But also you will be able to submit any questions that you want through the chat. Anyone can type in a question, and then Jennifer is going to be monitoring those questions, and then we're going to have time to discuss them. So we're going to be here for about 45 minutes to an hour, so maximum at 7 o'clock. Yes, and I guess we are a bit curious to know where everyone is tuning in from. So if you want to let us know where you are based listening to us, then you can put it in the chat, and we can see how international we can get. And then apart from myself and Jennifer, all of this is happening. We have Hannah on the back kind of dealing with all the logistics. So thanks, Hannah, for making this happen. And just to say that this webinar is going to be recorded. And so it will be available to watch afterwards through our website. So if anyone needs to go at any time, don't worry, you'll be able to catch up with what we have been discussing. So I'm just gonna, first of all, share my screen so I can show you a few slides. There we go. And this takes a little bit of time, but in no time you're gonna see the slides. And basically, as I said, I will give like a kind of a short background on what we know about these bottlenose dolphins and the long-term study that we've been conducting, and basically the reason why we are starting this new project and what do we expect from it. So again, at any time, just put your questions in the chat, and Jennifer will keep a good eye on them so that we can discuss them. So to give you an idea of why this project is starting, first we need to go a bit back in time. So about 30 years ago, we started a long-term monitoring project. And it's a collaborative project between the Lighthouse Field Station, the University of Aberdeen, and the Sea Mammal Research Unit based in St. Andrews. And so we've been monitoring this population for 30 years now. And our main tool to do so is photo ID. And a lot of you will already know what photo ID is. So, but for those who might not know, is we can monitor this population based on the photos of the animals that we take. So when we photograph bottlenose dolphins, we can identify them individually because each of them will have a unique dorsal fin. So here you can see 4 different dolphins from this population, and you can see that they have different nicks and notches on the dorsal fin, and they'll have different scars and white markings. And so by knowing who is where and when, we can figure out a lot of things about this population. So back in the early 90s, all the studies were focused in the area of the Moray Firth. And the reason is because that's where most of the population used to be. That's where it was more likely to encounter these dolphins. And actually, that's exactly the reason why the Moray Firth Special Area of Conservation was designated there. And the reason was to protect this population of bottlenose dolphins under EU legislation under the Habitats Directive. But then during the 90s, these animals did interesting things, and basically they expanded their distributional range. So suddenly they were starting to be seen more frequently further south. And so we adapted and we started doing field work further south in the Tay Estuary and St. Andrews Bay, because these animals were then being seen all along the Grampian coast and then down further south to the Tay side. And so that's exactly how this long-term monitoring program works. We do conduct fieldwork up in the Murray Firth SAC, and then we do fieldwork down south in the Tay Estuary and the waters around. And we share all our data between SMRU and the Lighthouse Field Station. And so we've been able to build up this very long-term catalogue of the bottlenose dolphins of the east coast of Scotland. And the catalogue is available online, so anyone can go and meet some of the individuals from this population. So what kind of information can we get from the pictures itself? Well, so the first thing we can do is we can know where and when we see animals. And some of these animals we have seen for a very long time now. So in this example, you have number one in the population, which is called Singers. And we first saw this animal back in 1989. And it was already an adult looking animal. And we still see him in 2020. So we've pretty much seen this animal every year. We do think he's a male because we've never seen him associated with calf. Now, for females, we get an extra piece of information also by following them through the years, is that we can learn when they have calves. So here, for example, you have Magic Nick, number 773 in the catalogue, and she was first seen in 1999. And since then, we've known 5 calves of her. So how do we use this information? Why is it important to know these things about the population? Well, by getting photo ID data from these two main areas of distribution of the dolphins during this time, we can learn things about the population, such as like how many animals do we have in the population, or we can learn about their birth rates or mortality rates, and kind of understand if the population is doing okay or not. And this information is important because under the legislation and under the designation of the SAC, each of the states, like the UK, has to report on how each of those populations is doing. So we can provide those that information about the population to help evaluate the conservation status of these animals. Now, similarly as what happened back in the 90s, animals from this population have been increasingly being seen further south. So it looks like the range expansion has been continuing. So animals have been seen in the Firth of Forth, but also along the northeast coast of England. And we know this because obviously it's not only us that are interested in these animals, and there's several groups along the coastline that have put quite a lot of effort already, recording sightings of bottlenose dolphins, and also kind of starting to get all the photographs coming in to try and figure out who these dolphins are that are now, for the last few years, increasing in this part of the country. And why do we care about that? What's the problem there? Well, it's a challenge to actually monitor a population that has such a huge distributional range, because, I mean, from the Murray Firth down south to all the way to England, it's quite a long area, and of course a big area, and we cannot be everywhere. And the problem is that then we're missing bits of information to be able to provide that information about the population of how it's doing. And this is where the new Citizen Fins project comes in. So the idea is that we invite members of the public that might have taken photographs of bottlenose dolphins south of where we are currently monitoring them. So maybe in the Firth of Forth or along the northeast coast of England. And they can submit their photographs. So we really only need to know, like, to see the photographs to see if we can identify the animal, and then know when and where it was taken along the coastline. And I just wanted to show you some examples of some data that come in. And The aim of this project is with these photographs that might be coming in, we're going to be able to start filling in some of the gaps about the general population. And so we might get a better understanding of how the movements of animals along the coast of Scotland and England have been changing over the last 5-10 years, for example. And it will also help when we estimate how many animals we have in the population and monitor whether there are changes through the years. So I've just pulled out this map that Jennifer produced with some of the photographs that have come through into the project. And obviously after asking for permission from the photographer. So this is an example. So Sheila sent us some photographs the other day that she had actually taken back in July 2020 from a boat that was operating off Berwick upon Tweed. And so she sent a few pictures and we had a look at them, and one of them was very kind of like easily to identify. So we realized it had these kind of like scars going across the dorsal fin. And so we could easily match it to number 1121 in our catalog. So that was fantastic. And she sent many others that we're working on them currently. And another example is our pictures that have been sent by Stuart, who is based down in Scarborough. And these are photographs that are taken from shore, actually. And he sent pictures that were taken back in May, for example, some of them. And again, the pictures were really good, and we could identify very quickly one of the females. So this is 1043, and you can see it's got these kind of like white markings in the dorsal fin, which have stayed through time, and it makes easy to identify. And she was a well-known female for us up at Tayside, but obviously he's taken some trips down south. And on that same from that same encounter, Stuart sent a few more pictures, and we were actually able to identify quite a few more individuals. So this kind of gives you a flavor of what Citizen Fins is aiming to do, and why are we interested in knowing which animals are where, so that we can get a better idea of what the population as a whole is doing. I'm gonna stop here, kind of my introduction, because we do have a lot of questions from the chat, and I can now see everyone that's tuning in from different places. So yeah, that's great. Oh my goodness, somebody from Kenya. Oh, hi team, excellent. Okay, so maybe if Jennifer can come back on the screen. Hi, Jennifer. and I know we had quite a few questions that were already submitted. And just a reminder that if you have any questions about the bottlenose dolphins here of the East Coast, of the studies that we have done, and obviously about the Citizen Fins project, just put them into the chat and Jennifer will keep an eye on them. So yeah, do we have any questions?
Yes, so our first question is from John, and he would like to know, will the people submitting their photographs receive any feedback about the dolphin?
Good, excellent. Yes, John. So our idea is, yes, to provide feedback to those that submit pictures. So what we're going to do is, once the photographs go in, we're going to check on them. And then we're going to try to match those IDs. And then if we find any matches, because the pictures are of like the quality that's required to ID, and actually we can find a match, then we'll always try to come back and provide some feedback on which animal in the catalog is, and if we know anything else about it that it's relevant. It might take a little bit of time, because basically this is the team here that you see that's working on this project. So it will take us a while, maybe, but we will try to always provide feedback. And you can always, I mean, if you're curious also, the catalog is available online. You go through our website, you'll see the link there that goes to the Lighthouse Field Station website. And you can also try to ID the animals and see who you can find. But yeah, thanks, John, for the question. What else do we have, Jennifer?
Okay, we have a technical question now. So
Okay.
I have loads of photos showing dolphins in different angles. What are the best ones for identifying them?
Yes, that's an excellent question, actually, because believe it or not, taking pictures of bottlenose dolphins, it's actually quite difficult sometimes. So actually, I thought this might come up, and I prepared a slide so I can show you what I mean. So what we want to see in the photo to be able to identify bottlenose dolphins is the dorsal fin. That's kind of like the one piece of information that we need in the animal because it's got all these unique marks. So if you go to the website from the project, you're going to see we've put some guidelines on what makes a good photo ID picture. And it all has to do with, first of all, can we see a dorsal fin? Is it visible? Great, we've got that. Now, are we close to the animal or not? And obviously, we can't get close to these animals. But with a good lens, then we might be able to get a good photograph. So we have to be kind of close in the frame so that the dorsal fin is big enough. But it has to do with like the focus of the image and then the angle. That's kind of one of the most important things. So the dorsal fin has to be at a right angle to us, so we can see one of the sides. And again, asking for permission from the photographers, I pulled some of the pictures that got sent by Sheila and by Stuart. And so, for example, the top two pictures from Sheila, like the one on the left, it's an amazing picture. And, you know, I would totally take those pictures if I was on board a boat and I had dolphins jumping around. And these animals are pretty acrobatic, so it's very, very prone to do that. But the picture, because the animal is facing us, we can't really see the dorsal fin. So that's not going to allow us to know who the dolphin is. But the picture on the right, on the top right, that Sheila sent, it's perfect. It shows two dolphins that are on the right angle, just kind of cruising along, I guess, the boat, and it shows the dorsal fin. So that's a fantastic picture. And sometimes what happens is that the dolphins are doing what they're meant to be doing, and you're ready with your camera. And then you get a second dolphin that it's kind of obscuring, or in this case, like Stuart's photograph on the top, on the bottom left, there's the spray of the upcoming dolphin that it's basically masking the dorsal fin. So again, we wouldn't be able to know who that dolphin is. But then his picture on the bottom right is again very good, even though the light is kind of backlit. It doesn't really matter at this point, because even then we can see those nicks and notches that are along the trailing edge of the dorsal fin. So again, that's kind of a good photograph. So yeah, so if you have any doubt of what kind of pictures we're interested in, because one tends to take a lot of pictures these days, especially with digital cameras, have a look at the website and then just see what's the kind of like the excellent to good to kind of 4 qualities that we could use. And we're aiming for the excellent ones, but the good ones can also be used to ID animals. Okay. Do we have maybe more questions either submitted or from the chat?
Yeah, so we had a couple more questions submitted that were asking about why some dolphin populations stay in the same place and others move around. And that's kind of connected to one of the questions that's been asked on the live feed. And Jeffrey's wondering, why do you think we're seeing so many of the dolphins appearing in Denmark and Ireland? Is it because they're now more readily identifiable, or are they moving about more as the population expands?
Yeah, this is an excellent question, actually, and it's part of the big puzzle. So maybe going back one step, so just within, like here, along the Scottish and English coast, we're talking about one population. But within that population, some animals will move more often along up and down the coast than other ones. And we see these when we do our survey. So certain animals are much more likely to be seen up in the Moray Firth, and other animals are much more likely to be seen in the Tayside area. but other ones will be moving up and down even within the same summer. Or some of them will spend, some years, like a few summers, we see them on a row in one area, and then suddenly they decide to be elsewhere. And that's exactly what has happened with some of these sightings further south along the northeast coast, where obviously part of the population is kind of like going down, but then they come back up. So there's still a lot of mixing, to the point that, it is one population that it's connected at this point. Yes, as you were mentioning, then we have had these other more international sightings. So we've had dolphins from the population that have been seen off Denmark and then off Ireland, and we don't know exactly why this is happening. It is true that these movements might have already existed before, and we just didn't know because there was less people out and about, let's say, taking these pictures. But it could also be a more new thing. So this is kind of part of the puzzle that we are trying to understand, how the movements within the population have changed over time, and what does that mean. And it is a challenge from a monitoring point of view, because now you have a population where you have some individuals that are going very far afield, and some come back and some might take longer to come back or not. So it is a challenge, but it's super interesting. Thank you.
Okay, so we have another question from Ivor.
Okay.
And this question is about mother-calf pairs.
Okay.
And he was wondering, do we know the names of any of the dolphins who've had calves in the last 3 years?
Yeah.
They've seen new ones each year, and they think chips might be one of them.
Okay.
And also, are all the calves being born back in Scottish waters?
Oh, okay. So yes, I mean, so every summer when we are out and about and we process the photo ID data, we will obviously have seen some newborn animals or older calves. And the way we assign them to their mums is by association. So we have to see that mom and calf together, swimming together a few times during that year, in order to be sure that that's the mom calf and not just a random little one that has just, like, for a moment gone with another adult. So sometimes we need to wait until the following year, when we then see that mom with a 1-year-old, to then say, okay, this is her calf. And also other times the calves might be born outside our field season. So we only do surveys between May and September, and calves can be born at any time of the year. So sometimes we arrive the next May and then we see a female with a 1-year-old, and we're like, oh, okay, you've had a calf since last time. So I don't have the list just now of everyone, but there's about, every year we'll kind of identify 10 to 15 newborns. It just really depends, because there's variability in the population. But about Chip, so that's ID number 344 in the population. We saw her last on 2017 in the Tay area, in the Tay estuary area, and we know one calf of her from 2010. So it is well possible that obviously she's now with a new calf, either a newborn or an older one. So yeah, it might quite well be. So the interesting thing would be kind of like to see, if you see her different times during the year, then if she still has that same calf next to her. Oh, and then, sorry, there was a question about the calves being born in Scotland. No, I don't think that's necessary. So calves, bottlenose dolphins in this population and in any population don't, there's not that they have like a nursery area specific for that. So calves can be born anywhere within their distributional range. And sometimes we've had mums with very young calves that then will just move up and down the coast. So obviously that doesn't stop them from traveling around. Great. I can see some familiar faces in the chat, so that's really nice. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and from back home also.
So we've had a couple of great general dolphin biology questions.
Okay.
So I think the general theme is kind of how do we know what other dolphins like to hang out with? And do they form little groups? And when they meet, do they get along? Do they hang around with the same friends?
Okay, yeah, these are great questions, and this has to do with kind of social structure of bottlenose dolphins. So bottlenose dolphins are one of those cetacean species that live in this what's called like fusion kind of society, where like they might be changing acquaintances quite often. So we haven't done recently any specific social structure of this population, but you might see animals that are generally associated with other animals in the population. And obviously we see all these natural like marks in their dorsal fins and nicks and notches and all the scars. So there is a lot of interaction between individuals. To which point it's friendly or not friendly, we don't know. So I'm gonna guess it's a mixed bag of both things, just kind of playful and a bit more aggressive in some cases.
Okay, so we've had a couple of questions that are asking to clarify where should I submit the photos.
Okay.
And a couple more that are linked that are asking about what markings are the most persistent over time other than notches and nicks, and do we use any software to match the photos?
Right, okay, so the first question about where to submit and how to do that is if you go to our website of the Citizen Fins project, you will see a tab that says how to contribute. And basically, it's got a very simple form of where were you, the location and the date that you took those photographs. And then there's a box where you can upload photographs. And there's a maximum of 20 every time. But if you have more, you can just get in touch. We've done that with for example, Sheila was sending more pictures, and then we'll just get them through, no problem. So through the website, you can just enter very basic information and put in those photographs. Then there was a question about markings. So yeah, nicks and notches are permanent, but they'll accumulate them. So they'll change that dorsal fin kind of each dolphin as they acquire more of those. And that's why it's important to kind of keep photographing them. But there are some other features that one can use. So the dorsal fins have different shapes, even within the bottlenose dolphin. So some fins are very pointy, and some other fins are maybe have a very wide base, and some are a little bit more curved. So once you've spent a lot of years matching photo ID data from this population, you kind of get to know those shapes. And we wouldn't just use the shape as a distinctive feature, but in combination with other marks, we would. And then in some cases, some animals might have some extra like big scars, or there's a few animals with kind of some like spinal deformities that obviously are very obvious that we can also use to identify them. But our main tool is the nicks and notches on the dorsal fin. And I think the third kind of part was like about matching software. We don't use any matching software, and I think the main reason is because we haven't used it before, and it is a relatively small population. So the number of animals in the catalog is not huge. So we estimate there's like over 200 animals in the population, although they seem to be kind of, going on the increase. They're doing well. And so it's actually, if you have somebody experienced that has been doing this for a long time, so either myself or especially Barbatini up at the Lighthouse, then you end up kind of knowing the catalog by heart. We've had Emily is now currently working on the 2020 data that we collect, and she's been doing this for a few years, and so she knows the animals also quite well. So experience counts for a lot. Good, excellent. Thank you everyone for all the questions you're submitting. This is very, very, very nice. So,
okay. So we had a question asking, do the bottlenose dolphins migrate away from the northeast coast of Britain during the winter months? Oh,
excellent question. So Right. So we don't conduct photo ID effort during the winter months. I mean, we used to do it at the very start of the project, but if you live in Scotland, you know that the amount of hours of light and combined with good weather in the winter months is very limited. So it wasn't worth it. However, we know they don't disappear. So from studies that use passive acoustic monitoring, so that's kind of devices that you can place in the water. It's like underwater microphones, and you can record the presence of dolphin species, for example, and then with specific like detectors, you can figure out, and also by where they are, whether those are likely to be bottlenose dolphins. So we know that bottlenose dolphins are present during the winter. It's quite possible that they kind of do different things during the winter than during the rest of the year, just because where maybe the prey resources might be and whether they might do different things as a group too. So we don't have much insight on what the movements, like who is where during the winter, but they are around the east coast of Scotland and further south too. So that's, yeah, they don't go anywhere, we think, but again, some of them might obviously move elsewhere, and we just don't know.
Okay, so there's a question asking how long do we plan to run the Citizen Science Initiative? And there's also been another question asking how replicable the project is, and would it possibly be feasible in Africa?
Oh, okay. So right now, so the current project is funded on a yearly basis, but the overall project, this funding is from Nature Scot and from the Firth of Forth and Tay wind farm developers, and we have like a 4-year kind of window. So we've started this year, and we just going to see how we get on. But ideally, we see these as the start of a longer term project that, but it doesn't need to necessarily kind of stop after 2-3 years. And I mean, I think this project will give us a good idea of how how transferable this kind of project is to other areas. And I think it might depend on the species that one is studying and how easy it is to get photographs of those animals that come from citizen science data. I mean, there's excellent examples for whales, you know, with humpback whales and sperm whales, and also with whale sharks and manta rays of like citizen science data that contributes to these very long-term and international kind of projects. But I think this is doable in other places. Yes. Wait and see. We'll let you know in like a couple of years.
So we've had a couple of other really great general questions.
Okay.
So David's wondering, how many bottlenose dolphins are there around Scotland?
Okay.
And Sam and Phil would like to know, do dolphins like boats and people, or do they get scared when the boats go close? Okay,
so Dave, so as I said, we based on the data that we collect of the east coast of Scotland, we estimate a population over 200 animals, and our results show that these population has been doing well, and there's every sign that it is increasing. So with the data that we might get through the citizen fins, then we might be able to adjust those numbers even better. And then Sam and Phil regarding boats and dolphins. So, I mean, I think bottlenose dolphins and other dolphins are generally attracted to boats, and I think they do like to bow ride, for example, because I think at the bow of the wake that the boat might be creating, it's kind of a fun free ride, like if a surfer was surfing a wave. So we do have that kind of almost problem where we go out to do our photo ID surveys, and what we want ideally is to just kind of cruise along the bottlenose dolphins, and then we can take pictures with our cameras. We get all the pictures, get out of the way, and that's it. But then we do tend to get some animals that will just want to come and have fun, basically. So we I don't think they like it, but we just kind of have to slow down so much, then they get bored and then they go on with what they were wanting to do. So yeah, I think they are attracted to boats, and that's why it's important to just kind of know, be very conscious of kind of regulations of how to navigate when there's bottlenose dolphins and other cetaceans around, and never kind of cut them through. Always go from the back, on the side, so that they can see you coming, and so that you don't interfere with what they're doing, and obviously you can't cause any harm to them.
Okay, so we also have a question saying, I have photos from more than 2 years ago. Are these still useful? And we've also been asked how long or how do we plan on keeping the public involved continuously with the project? So I think how are we going to update everybody?
Yeah. Okay. So the first question, if anyone has data that they took maybe 1, 2, 3, even 5 years ago, that's fine. It doesn't matter. The beauty about photo ID is that we can trace animals back in time too. So if, let's say, somebody was on a boat or off the coast and took some photographs of bottlenose dolphins, and there's some dorsal fins showing up in these areas that we are interested in, then just send them through. And then we'll have a look, because we can always trace back in time, and it's almost kind of filling in the gaps that you've missed things, and then suddenly you can start kind of like putting in those data. So yeah, it doesn't matter if it's older data, just send it through. And if not, just get in touch. You send us an email, and either Jennifer and I will be there to reply. And then Laura is asking about how we're going to keep kind of like updating. So we, through the website, we have now just started a blog part. And so the idea is that we will be posting updates on how we're doing and the data that are coming in. And also another idea that we have is, we haven't quite kind of decided, but my idea would be to kind of host these kind of webinars maybe once every 6 months or every year, so that we can actually have this opportunity of discussing with everyone how the project is going, and if there's any other questions. So we will keep everyone in the loop, and then we'll try to post updates as much as we can as the data come in, and we find out what we have with the dolphins, that the photographs that are submitted.
Okay, so there's a couple more behavior-based questions.
Okay.
We've had a question, I heard you mention about the spinal deformities earlier. So we've had a question about someone that's noticed a dolphin with a bent fin and spinal defect in the fourth. How will this affect the dolphin as it matures? And there's also been a question about if male and female behaviors vary with the dolphins.
Okay, so the first question with the deformity. So yes, it is true. We've had through the years, there's been a few individuals in the population that show these spinal deformities, and there's different types, and some of them are very obvious, and some of them are less obvious. We're not sure exactly sure whether it actually affects them, because we do have animals with such deformities that actually we've seen them as adults, and so obviously it's not impeding them their survival, and sometimes when they're born you can't really kind of like see that, and maybe it's when they gain kind of muscle and fat that those kind of like deformities are more obvious. So in some cases it might affect them, we just don't know. I mean, my guess, and this is just kind of me guessing here, is as long as it doesn't affect their ability to swim and thus to find food and forage, then there's no reason why it should affect them. And we've had some other weird things. So there was an animal photograph maybe a few years ago who obviously had some kind of deformity in the jaw, in the lower jaw, and whether it was because of a fight or whatever, or because it was from birth, then we don't know. But that animal was like a young adult, and he was looking otherwise fine. So we don't know. There are some cases, and it doesn't seem to affect them, or at least we don't have evidence that having such a deformity means that animal's survival is compromised immediately. And then there was the question about whether the behavior of males and females is different. Yeah, so I mean, in general, with bottlenose dolphins, the studies that have looked at, for example, different movement behavior, and there are differences between those. So males tend to maybe travel more between areas. They obviously have maybe a different agenda at different times, while females might be more resident, but it might just vary between individuals too. And whether males engage in more kind of like aggressive behaviors, then that's also a possibility. In general, male bottlenose dolphins are more heavily scarred, so they have a higher number of scars and marks in the dorsal fin and body, which would be a sign of like a higher number of interactions between them compared to females, which in general, there's exceptions, tend to have less scars and less nicks and notches on their dorsal fins. So that's kind of a reflection of potentially different behaviors between males and females. Thank you. That was a very interesting question.
Okay, we've got another 2 general dolphin questions.
Okay.
So Isla would like to know, how do dolphins drink salt water? And Grant would like to know, why do dolphins just have one blowhole if it's their nose? Should they not have 2?
Okay, you're really testing my biology. Okay, so Isla, bottlenose dolphins don't drink salt water. So cetaceans will get their water from their food. So when bottlenose dolphins eat different kinds of fish, they'll be able to get the water from the food rather than drinking salt water. And Grant was asking about why dolphins have one kind of one hole on the blowhole rather than 2, if that's kind of like the nostrils. And it is a very interesting question, actually, and this is the result of evolution. So in baleen whales, the blowhole has 2. There's 2 blowholes, like we have 2 nostrils, but in what we call odontocids, or the tooth whales, so the dolphins, for example, it has evolved to have just a single one, and it opens up into the one single blowhole. Okay. What else do we have? You're killing me.
There's a question.
Jennifer, very busy with the questions. That's great. Keep them
They're
coming.
Great questions, though.
Yes.
So we've got a question about what the current situation is with electronic tagging dolphins to track them.
Oh, interesting. Well, so the current status is there's none. I feel like we have never attempted or tried to tag bottlenose dolphins of this population. I mean, I guess the first thing I would say is you would really have to have a very good reason to attach a tag to a bottlenose dolphin, because it would be an invasive kind of like procedure that could disturb them, which is the last thing that we want to do. I mean, to track individuals, photo ID, it gives us, everything we need from a population point of view. If one was interested in knowing more fine, detailed movements of animals because they are interested in their foraging or something like this, then maybe. But I don't see it happening. I think there's been some attempts of tagging bottlenose dolphins with like these tags that have suction cups, so they're not invasive into the skin, and there's been some studies done in Florida. I might be wrong here, but I think it's quite difficult. I think it's quite difficult for the tag to keep attached to the dolphin, and my guess, to be honest, is another one would come up and just take it off probably. So there's no plans on tagging individuals of this population at this point, and I think it would be unlikely to do so.
Okay, so we've got a question from Hamish asking, how many types of dolphins do we look at? Is it just the bottlenose ones that we study? And another question asking what's the program or database we're using for the bottlenose dolphin catalogue is.
Yeah, I was reading about them. So for Hamish, so we focus on the bottlenose dolphins of the East Coast, and these are the most kind of coastal of the cetaceans that we have. I mean, there are other cetaceans around our coastline. I mean, Scotland is and England and the UK is a very rich area for cetaceans all around. So for us, like when we go out on the surveys, we might also see harbor porpoises, minke whales, for example. That's the other two kind of cetacean species that we would most likely encounter. But there's other cetaceans. But this project, we focus on the bottlenose dolphins. And then, yeah, it was Barbara asking about photo management software. So we keep it fairly simple for us. We process the photographs and we enter all the data initially on Excel spreadsheets, which basically have all the data and metadata from that picture. When was it taken? Which is a dolphin? And then somebody else confirms, yes, that's a dolphin, and date and time and so on. And then we store everything on like an Access database. But there are many options available, and there are some options to combine data management software with the photo ID software matching, like an automated one. So if you're curious about that, feel free to send us an email and we can expand on that. But we keep it very kind of old school, to be honest. Again, because it's a small population in a way, and we've just been doing this for many years, and it's kind of established our database, how it's set up. Thank you. I can see Tim Collins says, can I ask my question again? So is your question to replicate this in other countries? We can talk about it, but I think Tim, I think this is possible, and I think it'd be interesting to see how this project gets on, and then we can provide some feedback on things that might have worked and things that might not have worked. So we are always also very interested in knowing what people that submit photographs, if they have any specific feedback on things that would make it easier or better to provide photographs, then we are very happy to adapt and make it easier. So that's another interesting point. So we are getting a reminder that we only have 10 minutes left. So keep them coming, Jennifer.
So we've had two questions now. Someone has some 4K drone footage, and someone else is asking if we can take videos as well as photos. So maybe clarify.
Yeah, so we are primarily looking for photographs, so stills that show the dorsal fin. I mean, it depends, I guess, on the video quality. One might be able to take stills, but in general, it's very difficult to do that. So the primary data source would be photographs for this project. Any other questions?
Yes, so Lars has asked a question. Does the population range change? And if so, would it be due to ocean warming or anthropogenic stressors? And interesting question of, did the pandemic have an impact on their movement?
Okay, so the population range did initially expand in the 1990s, and then we seem to be in kind of the same situation over the last few years where these animals have been expanding the range. So it's not a shift, it's rather like an expansion. So we don't know why it's happening. We don't know whether there's any stresses behind. But on the other hand, like the results from our photo ID data show that this population has been increasing. So whether that's actually what's been the motivation for the expansion of the range. So if you have a population that it's expanding in numbers, and you might have some animals that are adventuring further south, and they find obviously areas where it's good to be, where they can forage. So there's no reason for that population those animals to then spend time in those areas and then back and forth. And we know that they forage all the way down along the northeast coast of England in the Firth of Forth, because there's photographs of animals with handling prey. Regarding the pandemic, we don't know. We did manage to do fieldwork during the pandemic, but it was much more limited. So we will have limited data this summer from compared to other years. But we don't know at this point whether actually it had, in a way, a positive impact in the sense that the oceans and the coast was much more quieter. But to be honest, I mean, the east coast of Scotland, it's not the busiest, except in certain locations where you have like a lot of boats coming in and out. But like compared to other areas like the Mediterranean, then the east coast has by no means the same amount of vessel traffic that other areas have. But yeah, it could be that the conditions have also been different for them, and how they have done different things. We just don't know. Right. Anything else? We've got, yeah.
So there was a question related to the population earlier, asking if the population is likely to get much larger or if it's at maximum capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a question from Keith asking if we share our data with Sea-Watch, and is it reciprocated?
Okay, so regarding the population capacity, so I mean, yes, in general, population will grow, and they might reach a capacity if they have basically a limitation on resources. So if there's a point where there's not enough food for everyone and so on. I mean, I think we are very far from that point. So we're just going to have to see what happens with these animals. If the population keeps on increasing, whether it eventually, kind of like there's parts of the population that are more likely to be in certain areas than other ones. So we don't know at this point, and this is why it's important to keep on the long-term monitoring of these animals that can live so many years, and so things take time for those changes to occur in the population. And then regarding the data kind of sharing with Sea-Watch, so we don't share like all the data with other organizations immediately, but there's always like options for collaboration. So for example, like Sea-Watch has been collecting data on cetacean sightings for a very, very long time. So the data set that they have, it's very valuable for certain studies, and so yeah, so there's always the option to obviously put all these kind of like brains together to come up with interesting collaborations with different data sets. What else? Hi, Ronnie. I can see you're saying hi to somebody else.
So we have.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Yeah, a couple more questions, maybe.
A couple more general dolphin questions that we've been asked. So we've been asked, can dolphins smell, and do they smell? And how long can a dolphin hold its breath for? Okay,
so first question, no, I don't think dolphins can smell. They lost that in the evolution, so they don't smell. And the second one is, how long can they hold their breath? I don't exactly know. I mean, I think if you did an experiment or so, then a dolphin could hold the breath for a good, probably 10 minutes or so, or even more, but that wouldn't probably be the kind of like natural behavior. So when we are out on the boat and we follow them on kind of a normal surfacing, they are out back in the surfer in less than a minute every time. So But if needed, they would be able to hold their breath for way longer than we would, that's for sure. But on normal situation and just traveling, I wouldn't expect them to be holding the breath for more than a few minutes, for sure. Anything else? Maybe one or two more questions before we wrap it up?
Yeah, so there's a question here from David saying, in his experience this year, he thinks the sightings they've seen off Pit and Weem have seen an increase in previous years. Is this possibly due to a quieter Firth of Forth?
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to what Lars was asking. The sightings of bottlenose dolphins in the Firth of Forth have been on the increase over the last few years. Now, one thing that happened this year is because of the lockdown, there were more eyes out. I mean, there is a great network of people already looking out from the Fourth Marine Mammal Group. But I think what happened is there was a lot more people too. So that's sometimes hard to then distinguish. So there could have been more animals, yes, for sure. And I think we also saw them more if they were there because we had more people looking around, which was fantastic.
So I was just having a look at the chat again. I think if we're looking for a last question, there's a good one here asking, how easy is it to tell bottlenose dolphins from other similar species, and have we got any tips for distinguishing them?
Cool. Yeah, I can see the question that it's to do with North Berwick, where they've also seen more animals. So bottlenose dolphins are bigger than porpoises, and what I would say is, so when you are out just looking at the water, the porpoises will be harder to spot. They'll have like a much shorter surfacing, and then they suddenly disappear. And with the bottlenose dolphins, there's like a longer surfacing, and you'll see they have like taller dorsal fins compared to the harbor porpoise. And just for size, like a harbor porpoise is on the very small range of sizes in cetaceans, like while bottlenose dolphins, these guys especially, they can get up like 3 meters and above. You will see, if you see anything jumping out of the water, it is more likely to be a bottlenose dolphin than porpoises do porpoise, but they won't be as aerial as bottlenose dolphins. And then what else? Even though bottlenose dolphins can be seen in smaller groups, you're more likely to see like bigger groups of bottlenose dolphins in this area, although harbor porpoise can get into bigger groups too. But like harbor porpoise has a very triangular, kind of flattish dorsal fin, while the bottlenose dolphins will be more like your typical kind of like, if you were to draw, ask anyone to draw a dolphin, more like curved, a bit more pointy dorsal fin, taller, definitely. Okay, I think probably we are going to have to wrap it up, but maybe I'll just get the last one. The Geoffrey, yes. So Geoffrey's saying that if dolphins live for 30, 40 years, and actually they can live longer than that, it's likely you'd need to study them for this length of time to have a good idea of population dynamics. You're absolutely right. So bottlenose dolphins can live definitely 30, 40 years. And, there's bottlenose dolphins known to have lived into their 60s. And that is why it's so important to have these long-term monitoring projects. So we have 30 years of data, which actually it's still just a snapshot on one dolphin's lifetime. So it's very important to keep on going with these photo ID studies for species that live so long. And with this, I think we are going to wrap it up. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone that came along today. Your questions were great, and I really enjoyed trying to answer them and discuss them. I am sorry if we didn't manage to get everyone's questions in. I do hope we can repeat these at some point, and so we can just chat about anything else that was left behind. I think there's just been a post in the chat about a feedback form. So if you have a couple of minutes and then you click on it, you can let us know what you thought about the event, so we can have an idea of maybe how to do it differently. And I was just going to say thank you to Jennifer, because you guys have been putting in so many questions, and you've done great just trying to filter them through and providing them. So thanks everyone. Have a nice evening. Hopefully talk to everyone soon at some point. And if you have any pictures of bottlenose dolphins, go onto the website and then just submit them. And then if you have a few winter days, not much to do, it's raining outside, it's very dry in Scotland, go back to those pictures, find those that have dorsal fins, go onto the website and submit them. And we'll have a look and we'll try to identify those animals and let you know. Okay? Okay, thanks everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.